All right. So open, narrow, close. We're not talking about a doorway here. What
Hmm.
we're talking about is a way of thinking about how a conversation moves from the beginning of the conversation through the different ideas that people have to offer to a decision. So, this is not about when you're just trying to make a decision on your own. This is about when you're trying to make a decision with others. So when we teach this concept, we use this image of a diamond where the open is the first half, representing divergent thinking, kind of generating ideas, offering proposals, having a brainstorm, things like that. The narrow is a sliver of the second half of the diamond where the thinking kind of begins to converge. You start to organize your ideas, maybe analyze like the priorities. And then the close is the point of the diamond. That's where the decision has been made.
Hmm.
So, what's really powerful about this concept is that you start to realize there are different things happening in different parts of a conversation. Like I said, the open is about idea generation and clarification. For example, if you were with your family and you were trying to figure out what items you were going to have for Thanksgiving dinner,
There it
you might
is.
say, okay, I, if you're some kind of family, say, I have a proposal. Let's not cook. Let's go to this restaurant that is open on Thanksgiving and we'll let somebody else handle it. Right. So that's a very narrow opening is a proposal. Generally, we have slightly larger openings. You can adjust the aperture like a list. All right, let's make a list of all of the items that could be at Thanksgiving dinner, or let's just brainstorm. Like maybe we want to get out of the box thinking and we don't want to have a turkey this year. We want to have a tofurkey or we want to have a ham or whatever it is. And so you want to brainstorm and just like blast open the thinking. So you can adjust the aperture depending on how complex the decision is, how much information you want. Once you've got all of that information, you want to make sure that you clarify. Like somebody might say, I don't know what a tofurkey is. That sounds terrible. What is it?
Hmm.
And then you describe it and they're like, oh, okay, I might
It
eat
still
that.
sounds terrible.
Right. So, or like, what's a turducken? If that's on the
Exactly.
list. So you might need to clarify. And the important part here is that everybody knows what you're talking about because sometimes what I mean by an idea is not what someone else perceives. So you want to generate ideas, you want to clarify those ideas, and then you start to narrow it down. There's lots of tools. I'm not going to go into the teaching of all the tools, but there's lots of different ways that we can take the ideas that people have generated and start to get a sense for what the group is naturally inclined towards. And we can prioritize and say, okay, let's look at the group thinking here. What do we think? All right, let's go this. So we start to organize the information, prioritize the things that we have generated in the open. And then if you do that work well, you can close on a decision.
Hmm.
The big idea about this whole thing is that your first priority should be for everybody who's involved in the conversation to know what stage you're in. What is the activity that you're engaged in this part of the conversation so that everybody can be focused on doing that thing? Because if we're getting close to a decision and someone says like, okay, well, it sounds like we've talked about it and we want these 5 things and that's all we can have because we don't have room on the table for more than these items. And then somebody else is like, wait a minute, what if we just actually like fly to Mexico for Thanksgiving? Right? And now you're back in the open and then everybody throws up their hands and they're frustrated because all the
Hmm.
work has already been done. So you want to make sure that you do each process completely so that people can feel like, okay, we've gotten all the ideas out, we've organized the ideas in a way that starts to reveal the thinking about what people naturally prioritize. And then once we've done that, we can make a decision that allows you to keep a group together and not have this like herding wild turkeys sort of an experience. I'm just
Hmm.
like holding on to this
I really
analogy till
love
the
that you're
end
going
of
to all
time.
in Thanksgiving. Yep.
So, at its whole, open, narrow, close is about taking a group through a decision making conversation in a clear way so that everyone's working on the same space at the same time. Like
Hmm.
I said, there's all kinds of different tools and techniques depending on how complex the problem is. And you might not go through the whole stages in one conversation. You might need several months to just open on ideas if
Hmm.
you're, say, starting a new business and you've got lots of different complex things to generate. So there's no hard and fast rule for how long each of these spaces take. But the main thing to remember is that know what it is that you're doing and communicate that to others so that they can be clear about what they're doing with you.
Yeah, I love that because I think of just today. I coincidentally we did an open session with marketing content, and how you said you can divide it up over time. That's what we did. This today was just open. We are open where we came to the table with some ideas and going to share these ideas and then just focus on that today, nothing else. Don't worry about narrowing, don't worry about looking for duplicate ideas, don't get too far into the weeds of what one
Right.
idea is, just let it all flow. and and there's even um something else to mention is you can have people assigned to different pieces. So, for example,
Right.
maybe it's an entire team or entire organization, entire whatever it is, a larger group is responsible for the open to bring together all these ideas. And then the agreement is that maybe it's three or so people are going to be responsible for that narrow and closed portion.
Right. Right. What I love about what you just said is that when you say to people, we're just in the open, then it's like it frees up the thinking. People are like, okay, I don't have to analyze whether this will actually work. I don't, I'm not going to decide on the solution. People naturally, I know I naturally have a tendency to jump to a decision and be like,
Oh,
oh,
same.
well, great. That one sounds good. Let's do it before really thinking things through all the way. And that can be a real risk when you're, especially when you're in business, you're trying to come up with the best solution. If you don't allow thinking to be big enough, you might not come up with the best solution.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about assigning different tasks to different people. There's so many different ways that you can do this. You can generate ideas asynchronously, and so that people just kind of have some quiet thinking time on their own, and then you
Hmm.
come together and clarify and start to see if there are duplicates, prioritize them, see where the group is kind of leaning towards in terms of things that are floating to the top. So there's a lot of different ways. It's a really flexible tool, but it's a great way. I When people learn this, they're like, oh my gosh, now
Yeah.
I understand why all the conversations with my team go off the rails, or now I understand why my husband drives me up the walls. It's because he's always opening when I'm trying to close. So it's
I love it.
I talk a lot about these tools make the invisible visible. There's like these invisible things that are just happening in the way we work together. And when we have an understanding of the stages of conversation and how we're opening, narrowing, and closing on different ideas, it's like, oh, I see the matrix, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, you have a minute and about 15 seconds. Do you want to give one narrow tool? Just like quickly in a minute, give a narrow tool.
Yes, I would love to give this tool, which we call N over three. This is something that's a quick way of seeing the group thinking. It's like seeing where the group is leaning towards. And it's where you take all of the items on the list that have been clarified and you've already like scanned for duplicates and removed true duplicates. You say, okay, we've got all these items. Let's figure out what's the top third that people think are the best things to move forward with, the best ideas to move forward with. This is not making a decision. This is not a vote. This is just getting enough of an idea of what people are leaning towards. And so you take the whole number of items, you divide that number by three, and then you have people choose whatever. Say we've got 12 items, then we say, okay, we divide it by three, that's 4 items. Choose the 4 items that you think should be considered for the final decision.
Mhm.
And so then people choose those items. You can record that in various ways, have people come up to a flip chart or annotate it online or write it down or share it however you want to do it logistically. But then you start to see, oh, okay, there's some obvious
See the
overlap here.
themes. Yeah.
You start to see the themes, and it's not a vote. It's not a said and done. Nobody's
Mhm.
making any agreements. Don't freak out. Your sweet potato pie can still come to dinner. But it's a great way to start moving the decision along.
Love it.